Welcome to Walpole 5-0. I'm Chief John Carmichael. Today is January 17th, 2017. Before I get into the log entries, a few things for discussion. High school presentation on Friday the 13th. And I want to thank Mr. Imbush and Dr. Lynch from the superintendent's office. They allowed me the opportunity to come in and speak to our school teachers at Walpole High School regarding the Walpole drug issues. Basically what's been going on with overdoses, with marijuana concentrates, with edibles, and we also had some discussion on the signs of drug use and impairment, so that teachers, if they see certain things that are going on in the school based on whether or not a student could be impaired, that they would be able to act on that and be able to recognize it. So we went over a lot of different issues. It was amazing. They asked a lot of questions regarding what's going on. I think it was kind of an eye-opening experience because a lot of times the teachers, I don't think, realize some of the stuff that was going on outside of the walls of the school, and they got very involved in the discussion, asked a lot of questions, and I think it was a really good outcome that we had the opportunity to speak about those things. So thank you, Mr. Imbush and Superintendent Lynch, for allowing us to come in and talk about those issues. With the marijuana concentrates, I know we're already seeing things across Massachusetts, even in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Yesterday there was some issues with kids who had THC lollipops. Last week there was an incident in Framingham where some kids got their hands on some THC-laced gummy bears, and what ends up happening is the kids end up in the hospital, and it can be a serious health issue for them. So we are going to see that trend. I mean, that's what's coming our way, and hopefully we can, here in Walpole, we can stay ahead of it and continue to make sure the community is aware of what's going on and ways that we can kind of address this situation. So thank you again for that. One of the big things that came up is that it has to do with peer pressure, but what we see over and over again in our youth risk surveys in Walpole is that most kids in Walpole don't use marijuana or drink alcohol. And a lot of times what happens is when we do the youth risk survey, mostly done through Gene Kenny, at our assistant superintendent of schools, we find that the kids actually think a lot more other kids are using alcohol and drugs than really are. So there's what's called a perception of other use, and what our kids are telling us that 80% of the kids are smoking pot, or 80 or 90% of the kids are drinking alcohol. But in fact, only 30% of the kids have used marijuana, and only 40% of the kids maybe by 12th grade have used alcohol. So those numbers are flip-flopped, and when you're talking to kids about peer pressure, you can use that as, not all of the kids are drinking alcohol, not all of them are smoking marijuana. In fact, most of them aren't. And that's just one of the topics that came up, and so I thought it would be important to mention. I want to say congratulations to Tommy Hart, Officer Hart. We have selected him as our new school resource officer. He will supplement Detective Songen in our schools. And several months ago we applied for a grant through the Community-Oriented Police Services, and we tried to get 2 school resource officers funded through the federal government. Unfortunately, we did not get that grant, nor did any other department in Massachusetts for some reason. But we tried to get it, we didn't get it, and we do understand, that SRO position, it's so important because, the schools are one of our most close partner in the town, and we need to continue to strengthen that partnership with our schools, with our students, with the administration, with our teachers, and with our parents, and kind of bring everybody at the table to try and deal with the issues that we have to deal with in our schools. And we think that Officer Hart is going to be specifically just for school resources, from everywhere from elementary school all the way up through the high school, and he will supplement Detective Songen, whose role will continue to be kind of detective, investigator, prosecutor, juvenile diversion, but also the SRO. And the reason why we did this is because it's very difficult to put a police officer in the position of an SRO, but also make them do all those other roles. And the department's always done that, and it kind of puts the officer in a bad position, it puts the department in a bad position. And what we want to try and do is is we're not eliminating what Detective Songen does. We're kind of trying to supplement what he does by having this other SRO that will just primarily be for resources and dealing with specific student issues in the schools and being a resource to our principals and teachers and parents and students. And we're going to give it a shot. We're going to see how this works, and we hope that it will enhance what we already have and make things better. And if it doesn't, then we'll go back to the drawing board and figure something else out. But we're going to give this a shot for a little while and see how it works. Student Police Advisory Council had our meeting the other night. It was a great meeting. Just great to see the kids come out again this year. Again, our goal always to build partnerships with our youth, especially these are our high school youth, so anywhere from freshman all the way up to senior. We had a good turnout. After the STUPAC, our Student Police Advisory Council meeting, we went over and attended a Walpole Alcohol and Drug Coalition meeting as well, where we kind of went over the same things that I mentioned at the high school presentation, overdoses and current trends that we're seeing specific to Walpole. So that was a great meeting. It's amazing, hearing, we try and pull information out of these kids, and it's amazing to see what they do and what they accomplish, not only academically, but we have kids that play hockey, and they're on the hockey team or the volleyball team, or we have one student in there who's an airplane pilot. Like he's 15 and he's flying airplanes, not solo yet because he can't do it at his age, but he's been through all the programs and he's actually an airplane pilot. So great mix of kids, and we always look forward to partnering with our students and moving on in that process as well. So wanted to bring up our marijuana fines. Channel 7 or somebody recently covered, I think maybe it was Fox, with issues with unpaid marijuana fines, and they kind of looked at across the Commonwealth how many unpaid marijuana fines municipalities had. When they came to Walpole, we went over and we looked at, and I think we had at the time around, just going back to 2015, we had about 40 unpaid marijuana civil citations that weren't paid at the town hall. So the problem with it is when we decriminalized marijuana, there was a law 94, Chapter 94C, Section 32L. Basically, that's the decriminalization statute. And when we decriminalized marijuana, an ounce or less of this drug, we created what's a civil fine for $100. The problem with that law was that we never instituted a way to recoup that money. So basically what happened is people just weren't paying the fine, and there was no real way to recoup that money. So what we've done is we've gone back and we've looked at all of those unpaid marijuana citations that are owed to the town of Walpole, either for, some of them are for possession and some of them are for public use. The public use ones are a $300 fine. The possession ones under decriminalization are a $100 fine. And we're going to go back. We sent a letter out to people that did not pay these fines, and if not, then we're going to set up a civil process through the Rentham District Court to try and recoup those monies for the town. And we'll see, we'll see what happens, and I'll provide an update with that. But the other thing is if people are 18 plus, or I should say 18 and under, if they received these fines. The way that it was supposed to be set up is that if they didn't pay it, there could be a juvenile delinquency hearing. They're supposed to go to drug awareness. They're supposed to have 10 hours of community service. However, very rarely does that happen. It's a problem, but at least with this mechanism, because the law doesn't allow us to recoup these monies, we're going to try and just do it through the civil process at Rentham Court. And hopefully that will work out. Car breaks, we did have a couple more car breaks this past week. Vehicles entered overnight on the area of Crane Road and also on Norfolk Street. So the trend has seemed to move from East Walpole, North Walpole, and now over towards the western side of town for these car breaks. And we continue to do many different things to try and address this. However, at this point, they still continue. So getting into the log, on January 10th, there was a protective custody. There was an individual at a local drinking establishment who became disruptive. This caused the employees to become concerned for this individual. They called the police and we went down there. The yelling and the screaming continued. So the officers did end up placing this individual under protective custody and nearly a charge of disorderly or disturbing the peace, but they didn't go that far. The individual was able to kind of curb himself and everything worked out fine. On January 11th, summons for shoplifting. Officer Beeman summons a 57-year-old female from New Hampshire for larceny under 250. This was after being caught stealing from a department store. It ended up being that this individual was in possession of costume jewelry and at the time of this shoplifting, and they were subsequently summoned in for that, and that will be taken care of with the court. A suspicious person, officers responded to the area of Main Street near the Triton Car Wash. There was a suspicious male carrying what appeared to be a long gun. This area was checked. But we did conduct a few field interview observations, and FIOs, what we call it. Not the same individual involved, but there was no sign of this individual. So we don't know where they went or what happened with this particular person. But we did go down, set up a perimeter, start to stop and ID some people and talk to see if we could establish other witnesses. But this was one of those incidents where we just weren't able to locate the person or find out what the actual disposition of this call was. So January 12th, disturbance at the Eastern Pearl up on Route 1. We got a call from that establishment saying there was 3 persons there that were in the parking lot and they were refusing to leave. The officers responded up there. They found these 3 individuals were still in the parking lot. 2 of them were extremely intoxicated, didn't even know where they were. One individual, a 19-year-old Midfield man, was taken into protective custody. 2 other males were also transported back to the police station, one being 19 years of age, the other being 21. The owner of that location will be summoned for serving minors. As I said, they were 19. 2 of them were 19 years old. 2 of them were minors, so they're going to be charged with procuring liquor for minors. Now, we've had issues with this location in the past. The Board of Selectmen have been very diligent in issuing out suspensions. We've had multiple incidents with this same location last year. We continued to have incidents at this location this year, and this will again go in front of the Board of Selectmen as being the licensing authority in Walpole for liquor licenses. And I'm sure that this location is going to have to deal with this situation. One of these individuals ended up taking a breath test and blew like a .24, which is basically 3 times over the legal limit. And to go back to the fact that this is an underage person drinking in this establishment, and not only drinking, but being overserved to the point where they are 3 times over the legal limit, is a major problem. And it will be something that I'm sure will dealt with not only in the courts, but also with the Board of Selectmen, as there are still open cases on the other issues that happened in Walpole prior to this. So I look forward to seeing what happens with that. A B&E, we did get a report of a B&E in North Walpole. However, it ends up that this was due to workers that had been at the home and turned out that it was not actually a breaking and entering. It was just harmless, and that the workers had been working at the home. And this is actually a relief for us because, as we've mentioned that we've been having a lot of car breaks, we have not been having a lot of house breaks, and that's always a good thing. We do, every once in a while, we'll have a series of house breaks that will start up, but we've been very fortunate this year. For some reason, we have not had many house breaks at all. So Officer Doherty, he did a great job with this, but he located an individual, a young man who was missing from Milton. There was a Section 12 that was set out for this individual, which is a mental health evaluation, where he was having some issues and he needed to be evaluated. And Officer Doherty and his patrols was able to locate this individual for Milton, and we were able to get this person to the hospital for an evaluation. And very good job by Officer Doherty, because those types of things. This is a distraught person who really needed some help, and Officer Doherty was able to come across him and do the right thing and get him into a place where he could be evaluated and get him help. So great job by Officer Doherty on that. Larceny over 250, Officer Perchicante, he took a report of a larceny. This was of $500 in cash from the Key High restaurant. Officer Perchicante did a great job with this. He conducted his own investigation, looked into several issues that were surrounding this matter, and he was able to identify a man from Norwood, identified as a suspect, and was able to take out charges against this individual for larceny over $250, which is a felony in Massachusetts if it's over that amount and arrestable. So great job by Officer Perchicante on that. Unregistered vehicles, we had a report of numerous unregistered vehicles on the property on Coolidge Road. Several vehicles were located on the property. However, they all found to be registered to that address, so everything ended up panning out okay. But then became the issue of that there were some of these vehicles that were parked on the roadway, which you cannot do in Walpole in the winter months, and they were spoken to and just issued warnings that they have to remove the vehicles from the roadway. However, they were registered. In Walpole, you can have one unregistered vehicle on your property, but you cannot have multiple vehicles, which was believed to be here at this location, and it turned out that they were not. They were all registered. They were just parked on the street, so that was taken care of. Great job by Officer Bieberman. An OUI arrest. There was a 58-year-old female from Medfield who was arrested for OUI alcohol. This came in as a series of 911 calls that came in. The vehicle was all over the road. It was traveling on West Street. Officer Bethany was the first responding officer assigned to Sector 3, and as she was approaching the area where this vehicle was seen traveling, the vehicle actually came on the wrong side of the road and nearly struck Officer Bethany's vehicle. As she traveled on West Street, she swerved out of the way, turned around, she executed a motor vehicle stop, and she identified this 58-year-old woman who was asked to step out of the vehicle, took field sobriety tests, which did not turn out good. She didn't do a very good job on the field sobriety tests. She ended up blowing a 0.24% blood alcohol content, and which again, it's similar to the PC we talked about. That's 3 times over the legal limit of being a 0.08. And this is at noontime on a weekday, so you know, beyond just this OUI arrest, there's some other issues here I think that are going to have to be taken care of, because you know, for somebody to be 0.24% at noontime, you literally have to be drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning in order to establish a BAC that high. So hopefully this woman can get some help aside from just the issue of OUI. Car brakes. This, in addition to the ones I mentioned in West Walpole, there was another car brake in the area of, I'm sorry, this came in as a car brake, 1062 North Street. However, we looked into this situation, ended up being that it was not a car brake. But what this comes back to is that, you know, we do ask for the community's help in seeing things that are suspicious or noticing things that might be out of place and calling us, because what we can do is we can track these things and establish a trend and establish certain locations where there might be a crime being committed, and we can act on that, and we can use that in our patrols to try and narrow these things down so that we can identify a suspect. And that's what happened in this case. One of the residents called, gave good information. However, it didn't pan out this time. So as always, we always encourage residents to call, especially in times like this, because that's really how we're going to catch them. Us working in partnership with the community will go a long way. So January 13th, traffic complaint. This was, let's see, 3 vehicles were parked overnight. Oh, that was the Coolidge Road incident again. So I put that on there twice. So Friday the 13th, 2017, hit and run. Officer Lagoa took a report of a hit and run in the area of the Walpole Country Club. And we are going to check into this. We brought this up last week when 2 of our detectives were struck by a vehicle that hit a pizza delivery guy and caused a chain reaction, causing that vehicle to strike our officers. And it ended up being a hit and run. This guy waved at the officers and then took off. And we have a lot more hit and runs than we used to have, and I think part of that is because of the surcharge and the insurance, and just that notion of getting in trouble, I guess, and people fleeing the scene quite more often than they used to. So this was a hit and run in that area that Officer Lagoa is investigating. Officer Lagoa also took a report of a stolen leaf blower from a homeowner's shed. Last year we did have a series of these where we had a bunch of leaf equipment, leaf blowers, and that kind of stuff, those power tools used for landscaping that were being stolen on a regular basis. We did identify some people involved in that. We did a couple of search warrants last year. A lot of times with this stuff, this will turn up on locations such as eBay, or a lot of times it'll be taken down to like Rhode Island and sold down there. So we'll try and track that, but in this case so far, this is kind of a sole case of the stolen leaf blower. Positive tickets, so Friday the 13th was also a half day of school, so whenever that happens, we always try and make sure the officers are out there hitting the streets and doing some walk and talks and doing those community engagement with our youth. And so the shift went out there and they banged out a bunch of positive tickets on the half day. I know some of them they issued out from First Sandwich, so Tommy over at First Sandwich gave us a bunch of free pizza slices, and I even stopped some kids that day and issued some out. So that's always a great thing. The officers really enjoy doing that, and I appreciate them doing it as well. So good deal on that. Revoked license, Officer Moriarty conducted a motor vehicle stop. The operator was charged with operating under revoked registration and expired registration. Scam. So Officer Bennett took a report regarding a scam with a senior citizen, and this type of stuff happens quite often. This same individual was the target of other scams in the past, so obviously people try and take advantage of these situations, and what's really the worst part of this is that they do target our seniors, unfortunately. So we do try to make them aware, do a lot of awareness and education with our seniors at the senior center. But in this particular situation, they ended up having somebody call her and say that she won a lottery or some type of sweepstakes, and that she needed to send some money to them and help. They actually had her withdraw money from the bank account to send it in to help get involved in the sweepstakes thing. And she actually did take the money out, physically took it out, and physically began to send this money to this scam. And unfortunately, well, actually fortunately I should say, people caught her and prevented that from happening, and helped educate her on what these things are and what these scams are about, and also worked with the bank to kind of flag any significant withdrawals in the future to help out. We've seen this type of scam where they're trying to tell you that you won a sweepstakes or you won the lottery, and then you have to send them money. Like that, there's obviously the first issue. But we've also had the arrest scam where they'll say that they have a individual in your family, and sometimes they can get this just off of Facebook or something like that, and they'll identify somebody in your family and say, they're calling from Canada, and they have your nephew or your son or grandson or whatever arrested, and they can't speak to you, but that they need bail money right away, and that you need to wire this bail money to them. And this has actually happened in Walpole, where people have gone to Western Union and actually wired the money out, $2,000, $3,000, and then they send this money. You can never get it. Once it's gone, it's wired. It's just picked up on the other end someplace, and it's gone. So we also have the driveway scams, where they're going to do some work and give us the money now, and we'll be back later to repave the driveway, or to thing like that, where they'll come back and do work, but they want the money up front, and then they basically just never show up. The other Social Security scams too, where they call and they tell you that they want money paid through Social Security. They're never going to call you. They're not going to call the home and ask for that information. And the whole issue of, if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, and that always is a good way to go about with that type of thing. But we do see these scams quite often. It is mostly targeted on our senior citizens, so we want to always make sure we try and protect them and talk to any seniors that to make sure and have that conversation with them to make sure that they're not sending money off to people like this, and protect them the best we can. Okay, so Walpole, Larceny, Walpole Wine and Spirits. There was bottles of vodka that were stolen. The area was checked negative for that person that was involved. This is like the third. We've had a few incidents recently with people going into our liquor stores and stealing alcohol. We had one last week where looked like a person under 21 years of age who stole a significant amount of liquor. And then this week, I think we've had two more. This particular one happened at Walpole Wine and Spirits, and there was vodka that was stolen from the store. Officer Dolan located we got a call about two suspicious motor vehicles at Bird Middle School. Two newly licensed drivers were racing around the lot. It turned out that they were two newly licensed operators who were driving and racing in the lot, and the parents were notified, and I'm sure that the parents will do the right thing and deal with that situation on their own and make sure that the kids understand the severity of that. False ID, this is kind of strange. Ken, this one happened at Wines and More at the mall, and the manager said that some individual left their wallet with a bunch of IDs in it, and we were able to identify who this individual is, but through their real ID, but there was a bunch of other false IDs that were also contained inside this wallet that could potentially be used to purchase alcohol illegally. And so we've been in contact. Officer Benner is following up on this and has been in contact with this individual, the real person, not anyone identified under the fake ID, and he'll be looking into that. B&E, there was a report, 1045 Main Street. This was into the washer and dryer unit at that location. One of the issues with this one is the reporting party stated that this has been ongoing for years, that they've been breaking in there, but they haven't reported it. So the investigation is ongoing. That scene has been processed and everything, and we're going to be working to try and identify who broke into this washer and dryer unit at this location on Main Street. We do always encourage people to call, like this, to say that this has been going on for years and haven't reported it. I can't understand that, but we encourage you to call if you're having a situation where someone's breaking in, or maybe you have larceny going on at a unit like this. We would certainly want to know about it and investigate it to the best we can. Officers located an individual that had walked away from Longview Farm. This was an individual that they hadn't realized was missing yet, or hadn't contacted us yet, but we were able to locate this individual in the area of Walmart and then transport them back to the home. Post-stadium events. So South Walpole was quite a mess at the end of the 4 to 12 shift after the game this past Saturday. And what we're really trying to deal with down there is the issue is after the game you have a lot of livery vehicles and limos and Uber guys and all these different ride-sharing companies that are all converging on South Walpole to try and pick up their fares. And what they're really trying to do is just avoid having to go to the stadium and having to pay the fees up there. So what they're doing is they're coming to the nearest point that they can get to towards the stadium and still being able to get out of there quickly, and they're parking down in South Walpole. So the officers have been trying very hard to keep them moving and kick them out of South Walpole and get them from stopping and standing on our side roads. Now it's tough because they're going to have to. They also want to make sure that they're respecting our residents and that our residents are able to kind of travel around and get through that mess as well. But also residents that want to get down to South Walpole and stop by Boyden, for instance, and pick up their kids or their husband or whoever might be at the football game, and be able to do that and benefit from the close access of South Walpole to the stadium. But the buses and the delivery vehicles and the Uber and all that, we're really trying to keep them out of there. I am myself and the deputy chief are meeting with Foxborough this week to try and get a couple of detail officers for post-stadium events, so that we'll have a couple of officers that are down there and assigned just for that purpose. Because what it does now is it takes away from the resources on the shift, and the shift officers and the sector cars have to be tied up to dealing with this problem. So we're going to try and throw that out there at the stadium and see what we get back. It is ironically, so Gillette, if the state of Massachusetts every year passes out what's called last drink data. Last drink data is when an individual is finally convicted of OUI liquor, the judge will ask them, where did you have your last drink? And then the individual will have to disclose where they had their last drink. Now, that's on the honor system. You know, sometimes I guess they're not going to say where they drink all the time because they don't want to throw their local establishment under the bus. But for the most part, you know, these people have to divulge where they had their last drink, whether it be a private residence, whether it be a certain bar or location. And what typically comes up a lot is Gillette Stadium. There's a lot of people that say that they had their last drink at Gillette Stadium, and not so much at the stadium, but also at any of the establishments that are up there. So we respond to that. Like we do in this past game, this past Saturday, we did have officers conducting traffic stops following the stadium events, following that game. Because if you think about it, a lot of the, you know, you have 60, 70,000 people coming out of the stadium, and a lot of that number is driving right into Walpole, and some of them are intoxicated, and we know that from last drink data, and so we will be targeting that. We always have, but something that we're going to be looking into. So just a few other stadium-related minor incidents again, and these just seem to be a lot of people bailing out of the car and walking away. But Officer Giblin located one male walking along the fog line of Route 1 by the League School. We ended up having to drive this person because they were walking on foot on Route 1 back to Patriot Place, because it just wasn't safe for them to be walking around on Route 1 after a stadium event. In fact, I know I've personally responded to fatal crashes on Route 1 in the past because of that exact purpose, people walking on Route 1 and being struck. So Officer Giblin did a good deed there by getting him back to a safe location. Then we responded to the area of Washington Street, Cumberland Farms and Common. This was for a reported intoxicated person trying to flag down drivers, and then upon arrival, that individual was getting into either an Uber vehicle or a rideshare vehicle that the officers were able to determine that he is now safe getting into a vehicle and be off on his way. And again, you know, this is part of our issue even with South Walpole, is you have intoxicated people trying to find that vehicle to get to. Another individual reported that his brother kicked him out of the car on Route 1, and because the brother would not drive him to another town, and so he jumped out of the car out on Route 1, and when the officers got there, the brother had come back, and apparently he agreed to take him to the other location, and he was able to get back in the car and drive him there. So seemed to be a trend. After the Patriots game, everybody wants to jump out of the car and walk, I guess. I don't know. But everyone was safe, at least. This also that night, 883 Main Street, we had a report of a loud party. We went down there, and everybody quieted it down for the night. Officer Foley was deployed out to Mansfield PD for that night. There was a fatal crash where a vehicle struck a tree and burst into flames. Officer Foley is our traffic reconstruction or crash reconstruction officer for the department, and he's well renowned. Officer Foley from our department has testified many times as an expert witness, as a crash reconstructionist in Superior Court and Civil Court and every other court, and he does an amazing job, and he is a true asset. When we have either a very bad crash in Walpole or a near fatal or fatal, Officer Foley is the guy to come out and to cover that accident, and he's been very well vetted through the District Attorney's Office. He's ACTAS certified, which is a national certification, and he knows the stuff, and he does an amazing job. So in this case, the Mansfield officer had been on vacation, so they asked us if Officer Foley could come over and reconstruct that crash, and he did. So on January 16th, the PC, this is kind of a strange call. A 19-year-old Milton resident came into, keyword 19 years old again. 19-year-old Milton resident came in, station covered in blood. He had lacerations to his face. This is at 5:30 in the morning. He just walked into the lobby, walking wounded, and he was placed into protective custody by Officer Giblin, who subsequently placed him under arrest because after he searched him, he found Xanax on his person, which is a Class C substance, did not have a prescription for that drug, and Officer Giblin placed him under arrest for the possession of a Class C substance. The individual, all we could get out of him was that he was out of a treatment, he was out from a treatment center in Brockton. He thought that he was in Bridgewater. He's 19 years old, he's intoxicated, he's in possession of drugs, he's covered in blood, and to this point we still don't know why. We don't know where he was, how he got here. He wasn't very cooperative with that, and we have received no other further information subsequent to this. So chalk that up as this kid had a bad night, I guess, and you know, we wish him the best. Wish him the best. January 15th, malicious destruction at Longview Farm. A 14-year-old is going to be summoned for malicious damage. This is following an incident where he broke out a large window. He pushed on it with his hands, pushed the window out, and the window smashed on the ground. He's going to be summoned for that. And then on January 16th, yesterday, counterfeit. Officer Perchicante took a report of a counterfeit bill. The $100 passed at the Big Y. This was a counterfeit $100 bill. So far, all we have is a 25 to 30-year-old black male passed this bill. And typically, what we see when this happens is you'll buy something minuscule, like, you know, you have a $100 bill and you're going to go in there and you're going to buy a pack of gum with it, or you're going to buy something that's minimal value so that you can get that change back. Now, when we do have counterfeit cases, we assign that back to a detective. Our detectives will typically reach out to the Secret Service, and the reason why we reach out to the Secret Service is they are the enforcement, primary enforcement agency that oversees counterfeit money, and what they see a lot of times is that there could be a trend with these $100 bills, and sometimes be in cases where it could be the entire Northeast coast where these bills are being passed, and so the Secret Service will get involved. A lot of times with these bills, you know, because they're not going to change the serial numbers out, you'll see a trend of the same serial numbers being passed in a certain area. And we've had plenty of this type of stuff happen in Walpole in the past, so Officer Perchicante is going to look into this one a little bit more. Maybe next week I'll have a photograph of this person. Right now, Big Y is trying to come up with that information as we speak, so we'll see what happens with that. There was a shoplifting. Officer Foley took a report at Walmart. This one, I just put this in there because it's kind of funny. The suspect was a white female, blonde hair, and she was wearing a Bruins jersey. She fled in a lime green Kia Soul. And this is after she stole Pokemon cards. So, I don't know. Go figure that one. Bruins jersey, blonde hair, driving a lime green Kia Soul, and stealing Pokemon cards. Right. Okay, so January 17th, an arrest. A 15-year-old was arrested for assault and battery and disorderly conduct by Officer Haber and O'Connor. This occurred at Home for Little Wanderers. Juvenile probation was notified. This individual went to a secure lockup, the alternative lockup program in Brockton. Detective Songen then had to pick that individual up and transport them to court for arraignment. But this individual assaulted staff, had spit on them, had to be restrained. And as a result of that, this 15-year-old was placed under arrest for these charges and will be dealt with in juvenile court. Somehow I missed it, but the other day we also had, when I was mentioning the people that had been stealing alcohol, we had another case at Palumbo's Liquors where an individual had stolen multiple bottles of alcohol at that location and several $100s worth of pretty expensive alcohol. And I have a picture of that individual from the surveillance photo, and I'll just show you that individual. Okay, so if anybody has information as to the identity of this person, please feel free to contact the Walpole Police Department at 508-668-1095. And you can always just ask for detectives or somebody from the detective unit if you know who that individual is. It could help identify the person who stole from Palumbo's Liquors and victimized them in this larceny. So that's it for today. I just want to say thank you for joining Walpole 5-0. I'm Chief John Carmichael, and hope to see you next week. Thank you.